Story 1. The night had barely begun when the uneasy feeling started gnawing inside me. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just excitement, the sort of anxious buzz that comes from being crammed into a sleeper carriage with 4 of your closest friends, late at night, streaking through black countryside far from home. We shared banter and snacks, the clickety-clack of the wheels below almost soothing, until at last the others surrendered to sleep, heads nestled into rolled-up jackets. I couldn't sleep, though. Josh and Emily were snoring across from me. Laura was playing something gentle on her phone to drown them out. Outside the barred window, darkness pressed close, broken only by the occasional yellow flash of a distant highway lamp. I watched spectral shapes shift beyond the glass, maybe fog, maybe a trick of tired eyes. At exactly 12:15, everything changed. The train jerked like a living thing woken in fright. My head slammed against the wall, and in that instant, the calm of sleep was ripped apart. The next second, the entire carriage screamed with metal agony. The wheels shrieked, iron strained, and suddenly we were weightless, the floor tilting at a sickening angle. People shrieked, and suitcases tumbled overhead. We lurched, then slammed down. Pain shot through my arm as I collided with something hard. All around, glass snapped and steel groaned. Then came the screaming, real, raw terror as bodies crashed into walls and windows shattered. For a moment I thought death was upon us, that the air itself would tear me apart. The chaos stretched forever until, with a final world-ending crunch, our carriage landed at an impossible angle and stilled. Silence. My ears rang with horror. I choked on dust and the metallic tang of blood. Groaning, I pushed myself upright, hands trembling. Laura was curled beneath her berth, eyes wide, pale. Josh's head bled profusely, and Emily was trapped by a twisted luggage rack. Panic rose in my throat. The carriage was dark, but for one flickering emergency bulb, casting grotesque shadows over ruined seats. Outside, the night was no longer silent. From the depths of the ravine, voices pleaded and wept. Some shrieked, muffled and desperate. I forced my gaze through the cracked window. Train cars lay strewn like toys, their frames bent beyond recognition, some half submerged in a shallow, rocky stream. The chill wind carried sounds, crying, coughing, calls for help that morphed into moans, into animal noises I couldn't even recognize as human. "Help!" Emily gasped, her voice already rasping. Laura and I struggled to move the wreckage pinning her leg. I tried not to look at the twisted angle her foot made, refusing to acknowledge the bone that poked, ghost-like, through her skin. Dimly I heard Josh vomiting. The stench of burning metal and blood filled the compartment. Somewhere down the train, a man was shouting prayers. Another voice, female, childlike, kept repeating her mother's name over and over until it became a chant, a plea to the void. Minutes dragged into hours. The carriage, perched halfway down a wooded slope, threatened to slide farther with every noise or movement. We barely spoke. When I did, my voice sounded foreign. "Laura? Phone? Network?" She shook her head, showing me the cracked, dead device in her trembling hand. Powerless, useless. We tried to open the door only to find it wedged by earth and stone, impossible to budge. Glass was everywhere, beneath us, pressed to our flesh, soaking up our blood. A sound made us freeze, a low whimper, fresh sobbing. I peered overhead. Josh, trying to reach the broken emergency window, had given up and slumped to the floor, hugging his knees like a child. Outside, something moved past our window. A torch beam, maybe, or a trick of moonlight through tree branches. We screamed ourselves hoarse for help, banging feebly on the frame, but our voices seemed to vanish into the darkness beyond. "Hold on," I told them, though I didn't know whom I was trying to comfort, my friends or myself. As the hours crawled by, awareness of our helplessness set in. We listened to the night, uncertain who died and who might join them. Whenever a new wail pierced the dark, Laura flinched and Josh's eyes squeezed tighter shut. Emily drifted in and out of consciousness, fever bright on her cheeks. Eventually, the forest shifted. First, a dull rumble overhead, the bark of a rescue team maybe. Faint beams probed the tangled iron. Screams turned to shouts, desperate for attention. Relief nearly undid me. When at last the jaws of our carriage were pried open, and our broken bodies eased out into the half-light, it was not triumph I felt, but numb exhaustion. I saw the ravine, the mangled train, the dozen stretchers already loaded with shrouded shapes. I remember thinking, no journey should end this way, and that for some, the darkness would never lift. Story 2. My name is Ben, and before that strange night, I never believed in real horror. I travel a lot for my job, always alone, and taking trains between cities became normal to me. I liked sitting in my own little train room, with its soft bed and gentle shaking. I always felt safe. That night started just like every other. I got on the late-night express train while it was raining outside. I nodded at the steward, shut my compartment door, took off my heavy coat, and loosened my tie. The inside was warm and quiet. My bag sat on the seat, and rain tapped on the small window. Soon, I drifted off to sleep, listening to the steady train sounds. I woke up with a start, but I didn't know why. The first thing I noticed was the silence. Usually on a train you can hear the engine, wheels clacking, or people talking outside, or the crew walking down the hall. But now there was only silence, so deep that I could hear my own heart thumping. It felt wrong. I checked my phone. The clock said 2:13, but there was no signal. I tried to ignore my worry. Maybe the train had stopped at a small station and everyone was asleep. But why was it so quiet? And why didn't my room feel like it was moving at all? I stood up and listened at the door. No sounds, no footsteps. I carefully slid the door open and looked out. The hallway was empty and the lights were flickering, giving a strange green glow. I called out, "Hello? Is anyone there?" But no one answered. My voice sounded small, like it was swallowed up. I started walking down the hallway. The doors to the other rooms were all closed. I knocked on one, then another. No answer. Every door felt locked except my own, which for some reason now seemed to be the last room at the end of the hall. That was strange. I was sure it was in a different spot before. Feeling confused, I decided to walk the other way. Maybe I could find a lounge or someone in charge. But as I walked, the hallway didn't change. It just kept going, looking exactly the same. Same stains, same bench, same number on the door, 7B. Over and over. When I turned around, my own compartment was there again, waiting for me. A wave of fear made me sweat. I hurried to one end of the carriage and tried to open the heavy door that should lead to the next car. It wouldn't move. The window in the door only showed blackness, and I couldn't see any tracks or night outside. Suddenly, I thought I saw something move. Just a shape, like someone slipping into a room ahead. "Hey!" I shouted, but nothing happened. The door didn't open. Then I heard a whisper. It was too soft and jumbled for me to understand, but it sounded like someone trying to talk to me. The lights flickered worse. For a second, I saw blurry shapes in the hallway, people whose faces I couldn't see, all turned toward me. Some had red eyes. Then, the lights snapped back on, and I was alone again. Panic took over. I banged on the walls and doors, shouting, "Help!" and "Anybody there?" The echoes filled the hallway, but no one answered. I started running, but again and again, I ended up at my own compartment, my coat and bag inside just as I left them. I sat on the floor, shaking. Maybe I was dreaming. Maybe I was really sick. Suddenly, the door slammed shut behind me. My reflection in the window looked scared and lost. I thought I saw something move in the mirror, something dark and smoky just behind my head. Then I heard new sounds. A woman crying, a small child whining, footsteps far away, and someone, an old conductor maybe, asking for tickets in a language I didn't know. Shadows slipped along the walls, whispering things I couldn't quite understand. Names, dates, bits of talk. Every sound faded before I could really hear it. Desperate, I tried to break the window with my shoe. The glass didn't shatter. Instead, it bent and shimmered, but no sound came from it. Outside was just deep, thick darkness. I spent hours, maybe days, wandering the hallway. It never changed. I never escaped. I got hungry. My mind felt fuzzy, and the train just spun on and on. More shadows came. Their voices whispered to me, "Join us. Lost, lost." The watch on my wrist showed random times, jumping back and forth. Now I am still here. Sometimes I wonder if I ever left my compartment at all. So I must warn you, if you ever ride the night train alone and wake up to find silence and emptiness, don't open the door. Don't trust what you see or what you hear. Some journeys never really end. Some trains ride forever, and nobody ever finds the way out. Story 3. My name is James, and this was supposed to be a happy family vacation. My wife Kate and our 2 kids, Emma and Max, were excited to travel on an old train route through the mountains. The view was beautiful, rivers, forests, and tall cliffs all around. We thought this trip would be peaceful and fun. I still remember the morning we got on the train, feeling relaxed and smiling. The train started moving smoothly, and we settled into our seats. The kids were eating snacks and looking out the window. The sound of the wheels on the track was calm, and the fresh mountain air came through the open window. Everything felt right. But then, something terrible happened. Around the middle of the afternoon, the door to our carriage suddenly slammed open. 4 men came in fast, wearing dark masks and carrying guns. I could feel the sudden silence that fell over everyone. Nobody moved. Their eyes were cold and cruel. "Everyone stand up! Move to the last carriage!" one of them shouted. His voice was loud and angry. Kate grabbed my arm tightly, so hard it almost hurt. The kids were scared and held on to us. Emma looked like she might cry, and Max was wide-eyed. The men quickly pushed us like cattle down the narrow hallways. No one dared to say anything. It felt like a nightmare. The men forced all the passengers into one carriage and blocked both ends with a heavy cart. They walked back and forth, shouting that we had to give them money, watches, jewelry, anything of value. Some people gave them things quietly, some prayed or stayed very still, hoping not to be noticed. The air grew heavy and hot, filled with fear and sweat. I tried to stay calm for my family, telling Emma and Max softly, "It's going to be okay. We'll be fine." But inside, I was very scared too. Hours passed, but it felt like forever. Outside the train, all I could hear was the engine's low noise and the wind moving through the trees. We were far away from any station. It was a lonely place. Nobody was coming. One of the masked men suddenly got angry at a passenger who hesitated. The man yelled loudly, and the tension in the room exploded. My heart was pounding very fast. I looked at Kate. Her face was pale, her lips were pressed tight, and she kept watching our kids carefully. Then there was a sudden loud bang. Everyone froze. I didn't know where the sound came from. Maybe a shot or a door closing hard, but it broke the quiet. The attackers looked worried. The leader shouted at us to get down on the floor and be quiet. I heard Lily quietly crying into Kate's jacket. Max squeezed my hand. His small fingers shook. We waited, not moving. The shadows outside the windows shifted as the train moved deeper into the forest. I thought about calling for help, but our phones didn't work here. No signal at all. Then, far away, I heard sirens. Somebody must have called the police. I felt a small hope growing inside me. The masked men noticed it too. They became nervous and started yelling more. One of them broke a window to scare us, but I looked at Kate, and I saw she believed help was coming. Suddenly, the sound of police cars and officers' voices filled the carriage. Flashlights moved through the dark space. The masked men panicked. One tried to fire a gun, but an officer quickly shouted at him to stop. The train slowed down and finally stopped. Police officers rushed in and quickly took away the guns. We were saved. The nightmare ended just as fast as it started. The rescuers helped us out of the carriage. The cold air outside felt strange after being trapped for so long. I held my family close, still shaking. I could hear paramedics helping others nearby. The police asked us questions, their voices calm but serious. As we walked away from the train, the forest looked calm again, but none of us would ever forget what happened there. The sudden fear, the helplessness, and the question of what could have gone wrong if no one had come. That day taught me something important. No matter how beautiful or peaceful a place looks, danger can come suddenly. That journey made me realize how fragile safety is and how quickly life can change. If you ever take a trip like this, be careful. Some trips can turn into nightmares in just minutes, and you never know if help will arrive in time. Story 4. My name is Daniel, and I never thought a regular train ride could turn into a nightmare. It all started one evening when I took the commuter train home after a long day at work. The train was crowded, with people sitting close together, the usual noise and bustle around me. The warm air felt heavy inside the carriage. At first, everything seemed normal. People were talking quietly or resting, listening to the soft sounds of the train moving on the tracks. But then, I noticed a man a few rows ahead who didn't look well. He was sweating a lot, and his face looked pale. He kept coughing, hard and non-stop. At first I thought maybe he just had a bad cold or flu, but his coughing became worse, and he was breathing very fast and shallow, like he couldn't get enough air. A woman nearby gave him a bottle of water, but he barely moved it to his lips. Suddenly, without warning, the man fell forward and collapsed on the floor with a heavy thump. People around gasped, stepping back quickly. Panic spread fast through the carriage. The train staff hurried over and started trying to help, but they looked worried. A voice came over the loudspeaker. "Please stay calm. Medical help is on the way. Do not leave your seats." It was already too late. Soon, more passengers started showing the same symptoms. A woman near the door bent over, coughing badly. A man's face turned bright red, and he broke out in a cold sweat. More and more people began to look sick, feverish, weak, coughing hard. The air became thick with fear. Everyone was looking around, afraid to catch whatever was spreading. Whispered words passed between passengers. "What is this? Is it a disease?" The train staff tried to keep control. They moved the sick passengers to one end of the carriage, hoping to keep them apart from the healthy ones. But it felt like they were fighting a losing battle. The sickness was spreading too fast. Suddenly, the emergency alarm went off. The train jerked as the driver pulled the emergency brake. The wheels screeched loudly, and the train stopped in the middle of nowhere. The windows showed nothing but dark trees and night sky. The conductor's voice came again, tired and stressed. "We are stopped due to a medical emergency. Authorities have been informed. Please stay inside the train and do not leave your seats." The carriage felt like a trap. The longer we stayed there, the heavier the fear grew. Some people quietly cried, others moaned softly, and a few sat very still, resigned. I looked across to see a little girl holding her mother's hand tightly, tears rolling down their faces. Nearby, a man who was coughing so much he could hardly breathe gasped, "It's spreading! Faster than before!" No one knew what to say or do. The medical supplies on board were few and not enough. The staff did what they could, but it was clear they were overwhelmed. Outside, I faintly heard sirens far away, a promise that help might come. But inside, time moved painfully slow. The darkness outside made the carriage seem even smaller and more frightening. I felt sweat and tears running down my face as I prayed silently for the nightmare to end. For myself, for everyone there. I suddenly understood how fragile our safety really is. We trust that things will be okay until something invisible and unknown changes everything in a moment. After what felt like hours, people in full protective suits finally arrived on the train. They wore masks and suits that covered them from head to toe. Standing near them felt both hopeful and scary. They began to carefully help the sick passengers one by one. I was relieved when they helped me out into the fresh air. As I looked back at the train, it looked cold and empty, a metal box holding memories of fear and sickness inside. That night, I realized how quickly life can turn from normal to terrifying, and how the scariest things aren't loud or visible. They are the silent dangers we cannot see. Story 5. My name is Alex, and I never believed in ghosts or spooky things. At least, I didn't until that night on the train with my friends. We had just come back from our college festival. It was late at night, and we were tired but happy, ready to go home. There were 4 of us, me, Maya, Jordan, and Sam. We were sitting together in our train car, the quiet hum of the train and the soft lights making it feel calm. The wheels on the tracks made a steady sound, and we were chatting quietly. Then the train went into a long tunnel. For a few seconds, everything went dark except for a small red emergency light. I heard a soft dripping sound, maybe water, maybe just my imagination. When the train came out of the tunnel, something was wrong. I looked out the window, but there was nothing to see. No trees, no fields, no lights, just thick white fog everywhere. It was like the train was floating in a cloud that never ended. "Hey guys, look at this," Maya whispered, her voice shaking. "What is this place?" We all stared. The fog was so thick outside you couldn't see anything at all. I felt cold suddenly, even though the train was warm inside. Then the strange things started. At first, it was quiet whispers, soft voices that sounded like people talking far away, but I couldn't make out the words. Then I heard footsteps outside our door, slow and echoing, but when we looked, no one was there. Jordan stood up and asked, "Is somebody there?" There was no answer. When we looked down the hall, it was empty and dark except for the flickering lights overhead. Then I saw something that made my heart pound. A woman's pale face appeared in the far end of the hall just for a second before disappearing like smoke. "Did you see that?" I said, my voice trembling. Sam nodded. "Yes, something is really wrong." Suddenly, the lights flickered very fast, and the whole carriage went almost dark for a moment. When they came back on, shadowy figures were inside the carriage, ghost-like shapes, very faint with glowing red eyes. They moved silently, fading whenever we tried to look directly at them. We all grabbed each other's hands, our fear growing. Weird noises filled the carriage, the soft sound of crying, a quiet laugh like a child, and whispers calling names none of us recognized. It felt like the train was alive with something we couldn't understand. I tried to use my phone to call for help, but there was no signal at all. When I tried to open the door, it was stuck tight. I even tried to break the window, but it wouldn't crack. It was like it had turned into ice. The fear got worse. Maya said she saw someone sitting across from her, but when we looked, the seat was empty. Jordan said he heard footsteps coming down the hall, but no one ever showed up. It felt like the train was playing tricks on us. I started to lose control. Time seemed to get weird. It didn't move forward like normal. The clock kept spinning back and forth. The fog outside grew thicker, like it was trying to swallow the train whole. We whispered to each other to stay calm, but even our voices felt strange, like echoes from another world. I thought I might scream or panic, but then, slowly, light started to come in through the windows. Dawn was coming. The fog outside faded away like smoke being blown by the wind. Colors came back to the trees and fields outside, and the warm sunlight returned inside the carriage. The shadowy figures disappeared. The strange noises stopped. We looked at each other, tired and scared. Was it all a bad dream? A trick of our minds? When the train stopped at the next station and we got off, everything seemed normal. The sun was shining and nothing looked out of place. But I still remember those ghostly faces, the long tunnel, the thick fog, and the feeling that we were trapped somewhere between two worlds. Sometimes, even now, I feel like those eyes are still watching me, waiting for the train to take me back to that place. If you ever travel late at night, be careful and keep an eye on what's really around you. For more stories like this, subscribe Goofy Horror.